Welcome everyone. I'm Councillor Susie Horton. I'm the Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education. A little bit of housekeeping. If the continuous fire alarm sounds... Oh, by the way, we are at the Cabinet meeting for Children, Families and Education, if that wasn't obvious from my introduction. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Due to the ice rink in front of the usual assembly point, please assemble in the turning circle at the end of King Henry Street past the University Parks building. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in should sign out when they leave the building at the end of this meeting. And regarding live web streaming, just drawing people's attention to the fact that it is live streamed. Everyone speaking via microphone will be on camera. Members of the press and public are permitted to record as long as it doesn't disrupt the meeting. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they've finished speaking. Okay, introductions. I will start here in front of me and we'll just go around.
Alison Critchley, Head of Sufficiency and Resources in Education.
Angela Mann, Finance Manager for Children, Families and Education.
Alison Edgerton, Group Accountant for Children, Families and Education.
Mike Stoneman, Deputy Director, Education.
Thank you, everyone. There are no deputation requests. So are there any apologies for this meeting?
None, Kevin. No. None today.
Okay, no apologies. So we will go on to declaration of members' interest. So that is me, and I am Vice Chair Governors at Craneswater Junior School. I don't think that particularly impacts on anything in today's agenda. So item 3, which is the first report, is the closure of the Inclusion Centre at Portsmouth Primary School. We can assume that we've kind of read it all, especially given the people who are here. So if you could just give a few highlights, because of the streaming, and then we'll come on to the decisions. Okay, thank you, Alison.
Thank you. So this report is asking members to agree to move to the formal statutory process for closing the Inclusion Centre at Portsmouth Primary School. As you'll see from the report, the Inclusion Centre is providing a really good standard of education, but as part of our strategy, there's an emphasis on larger centres providing that progression for children. We originally started the consultation in the autumn of 2021, but following consultation with parents, agreed that we should be putting back the proposal from September 2022 to September 2023, as this will mean that a new centre at Arundel Court Primary School will be open, and mean that some of the children who are currently at Portsdown will be able to transfer to the Arundel Court provision. Others will be old enough to move on to secondary provision. There's been really close work with the families involved, and there's a plan in place, an agreed plan for each of the children currently at Portsdown to move to new provision from September, and therefore we would like permission to move to the statutory consultation process.
Thank you so much. Any comments from other officers? No. Just to pick up a few points. Obviously, this is pre-statutory. It will now go to statutory. It will be an inclusion centre that was for 9, which will now be an inclusion centre for 20-something, 24. Obviously, there's your economies of scale about that, but actually, the point I wanted to make was about needs-led provision, and actually, this will be able to attend to what are changing needs, I think, within the city. So that's a really positive thing. We did look at it, as you said before. I think the decision to extend that period of time was a good one. I'm really aware that all of the families involved have been extensively communicated with it. And actually, I'd just like to thank Portsdown, because the main message I want to get out is, was something closes down, sometimes it's a negative thing, but it's not in this case. And Ofsted have repeatedly highlighted the high quality of provision, and I'd like to place on record my thanks for Portsmouth, and good luck to the new provision that will be opening. So the recommendation for me is to consider the responses to the pre-statutory consultation on the proposal to close the inclusion centre at Portsmouth Primary School, and authorise the Director of Children, Families and Education to proceed to the publication and representation stages of the statutory proposal to close it. So I'm happy to do so. Thank you. So the next report, the next item is the DSG, the Dedicated Schools Grant, and this will be presented by Alison.
Thank you. So this is the regular report that we bring to Cabinet Member, providing an update on the forecast outturn on the Dedicated Schools Grant for 22-23. In October, you revised the budget and approved the budget revisions. Those are included in the tables for completeness, although it was after the end of the quarter. The forecast position is at the end of September 22 is an underspend of 752,000, and all the reasons for that are set out within the report. Table 3 sets out the forecast position for the Dedicated Schools Grant balance and the agreed commitments against that balance and proposed use of any uncommitted balances. The report also includes confirmation that the funding for the Relational Practice project can be provided through the High Needs block and funded from the DSG balances. And finally, it is a report for noting.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to make any comments about any of the content for the DSG? I think it's pretty straightforward. I just want to highlight the fact that I'm really glad that the relational practice money has been able to be taken out of that part of the DSG, because I think it is going to be a really, really positive thing for all schools in the city. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Thank you so much for presenting that. So it's a noting report, so it's duly noted. Next item is the portfolio budget monitoring report for the second quarter. This is Angela, over to you.
Thank you. So the report has all the details in it, but the main parts of the report are that capital is still projected to be on budget in the main, and there is a pressure of 2.9 million being shown for the education schemes, but we're expecting the grant that we've got to cover that. There is, in terms of the revenue though, there's a projected pressure of 2.8 million, of which 1 million relates to COVID-19 pressures, and there's 53,000 as a result of the increased energy costs that we're facing. The largest overspends are in the looked after children areas of 2.7 million, and home to school transport of 0.8 million. And 0.2 million of that is a result of the cost of living, and partly offsetting that is underspends of 1.2 million in adolescents and young adults, where some high cost places have reduced, and there's also been changes in the grants that we're getting. So the portfolio is facing many pressures, and there's continuous work to reduce these. It includes close review of the very high cost placements and all the role that all the partners have in contributing to the costs of those. Introducing new ways of supporting children and young people and their families and carers. However, there has still been an increase in the forecast between quarter one and quarter two. And I think we've been saying for quite a while now that, there's COVID, we wasn't sure what the long tail of COVID meant, and also, we do have cost of living as well now. In terms of the 22-23 pay award, in excess of the original budget, this is being met corporately, and so it shouldn't really result in an additional pressure to the portfolio budget once that's in place. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any other comments? I know, welcome. Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, apologies for my late arrival. Sarah Daly, Director of Children, Families and Education.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there anything you want to add to that? I think it was pretty clear, but I don't know whether you want to say anything.
No, I think it is just noting that significant impact on and the demand on the system in respect of the long tail of COVID, the mental health implications of that, along with physical health needs, but also now with the cost of living crisis, what that's meaning for children and families in the city, and that is having a knock-on in terms of demand through the front door and that continuous journey for our children in the system.
Thank you. I don't think I have much more to add other than to the fact that the two things that remain really as a big pressure are the same ones that have been for years, which is the high cost placements and also the home to school transport. And actually, when it comes to high cost placements, there's not a lot we can do about that. We're doing our job, but there is something that the government could do about that if they intervened in what is a private market. And I know this is the feeling across the country, but it would make such a significant difference to a city where we have a high demand, and as has been said, we've done austerity, a pandemic, and now a cost of living crisis. It's going to impact on those families that have the highest needs, and we are absolutely feeling that and doing our best. And it's a bit of a shame because some of the other strategies that we had in order to mitigate against the pressures are working, but they're being disguised behind these other pressures, and that is a shame. And I'd just like to place on record my thanks to all the officers for everything you do to try and keep that overspend and keep us within budget as much as you do. Thank you. So that is just an information report. So we come on to the next report, item 6, which is the school funding arrangements for 23-24. And that's back to Angela. And again, assume that we've read it.
Brilliant, thank you. So the report was detailing the information that we knew for the summer, and then before we got here and after the report was written, we also heard about the autumn statement, which outlined a further £2 billion of funding, and we're still awaiting the details of that, but we at the moment believe that it will be distributed as a separate grant. So apologies that that was after this report was written. In terms of the guidance for the schools block, the main things are that the supplementary grant of 22-23 is being rolled into the mainstream formula. There's changes to the mandatory formula factors, including the addition of the sparsity formula and a tightening of flexibilities for local authorities. In terms of the approvals required, we don't always get the funding in line with what we need to distribute, and there is some flex, so we're highlighting what we would propose to do because the timescales are always very tight in terms of the allocations. So in terms of managing the affordability, if funding isn't enough, or actually if we get a bit more funding, then the ways that we would distribute it would be to look at the area cost adjustments or look at the minimum funding guarantee percentages, but always in line with the rules that we have to work with. In terms of the high needs, the details are in the section 8 of the report, and there's the minimum funding guarantee for special schools to plus 3% on the combined 21-22 baseline. And for early years, the consultation has just closed actually now, but we tried to consult sooner, even though actually we don't completely know what the government's proposing. We knew what the the consultation was in the summer, so we've reflected that in the consultation to try and get as much feedback as possible from providers and avoid the crucial Christmas period. So that consultation has closed, and we're working our way through that at the moment. And I think if things are in line with last year, I think we might know something tomorrow, but we're still waiting, but we hope it will be before Christmas. So, yeah, we're still waiting for that at the moment. I don't really got any questions.
Thank you. No, I don't have any questions. I think it's quite clear. I think a lot of people are waiting on the government finance announcements before Christmas, and they'll probably run away and disappear over Christmas. They probably do it in the last week, so that there's a bit of a gap. But no, I know the pressures around the announcements and the information, and then turning this around are always really, really tight. But thank you very much for that. Do any other officers want to make any other comments? No? That's great. So I note the Department for Education's proposed changes to the school revenue funding arrangements for 23-24 and approve the proposals for implementing the local funding formula arrangements as set out in this report, particularly to implement the national funding formula rates for primary and secondary, implement a minimum funding guarantee of at least 0% and up to 0.5% subject to affordability, and the method of managing affordability as set out in those paragraphs. Thank you so much for all that. And I think, if I am correct, that brings us to the end of this meeting. So happy to close it and wish you all a wonderful, enjoyable, restful break, doing whatever makes you happy. Thank you.